My boyfriend broke up with me in a restaurant, stuck me with the bill, and told me I should be thankful he even bothered with me. I stayed calm and bided my time. Later, 13 missed calls revealed his web of lies had unraveled his career. He called me unattractive in front of his buddies and ditched me at a restaurant, leaving me to cover the cost of our dinner. As he walked out, he loudly declared that someone like me should feel lucky. He even gave me the time of day. I kept my composure and waited. My phone lit up with 13 missed calls. I'm still processing the whole ordeal, replaying it in my mind, wondering if it was all a bad dream. But no, my maxed-out credit card and the ice cream stains on my sofa confirm it was real. For context, I'd been with Jake for 2 years. 2 whole years.
Not juste a fleeting romance.
We had our routines, binge-watching shows, awkward family holiday gatherings, and that ridiculous couples yoga session he insisted on, where we both failed spectacularly. Things weren't perfect, but are they ever? I thought we were stable. We'd even talked about living together. Jake had his annoying quirks, like leaving dishes everywhere, texting during movies, and offering helpful critiques about my looks. Comments like, "That top makes your shoulders look broad," or "Have you considered switching up your hair?" I brushed them off as him being blunt. I guess I was too forgiving. So, Jake texted me about dinner with some colleagues. He'd always kept his work life separate, saying it wasn't professional to mix things, so I was thrilled to be included, splurged on a new outfit, ignoring my budget, and spent hours getting ready. Full YouTube makeup tutorial and my fancy hair straightener I only use for special occasions. I showed up at this upscale downtown restaurant with tiny portions and no prices on the menu.
First red flag.
Jake was already there with 2 co-workers, Tom and Derek. The vibe felt off as I approached. Jake barely acknowledged me.
Juste à Alfarted Wave and a Kurt, you roulette.
I was only 3 minutes late because parking was a nightmare. I sat down, and he glanced at my outfit, saying, "That's what you picked?" Loudly. His friends exchanged looks, and my face flushed. For the record, I wore a navy dress I thought was flattering, nothing wild or inappropriate. I tried to laugh it off, asking, "Was there a dress code I missed?" He just shrugged and said they'd already ordered starters. Great. For the next hour, Jake rambled about work stuff I didn't understand while his friends nodded along. When I tried to chime in, he either talked over me or corrected me like I was clueless. When I mentioned a story about a customer at my shop, he cut me off with, "She doesn't really get how the corporate world works," and waved me off. As if retail isn't a real job. I've been a manager for 3 years. I sat there, feeling smaller by the minute, wondering if Jake had always been this dismissive or if he was just showing off for his friends. Either way, it was humiliating. Then Tom asked how we met, and I started explaining how his coworker Sarah, my best friend, introduced us. Jake cut me off mid-sentence, saying, "Yeah, Sarah felt sorry for her. I was doing her a favor." He laughed. My stomach dropped. That's not remotely how it happened. Sarah had warned me about Jake's ego but said he was a good guy deep down. Spoiler, he wasn't. I excused myself to the bathroom to avoid breaking down in front of them. In the stall, I texted Sarah, freaking out about what was happening. I got a notification that Jake had just posted on Instagram, tagging himself at the restaurant with Guys Night Out. As if I wasn't even there. Sarah called, but I sent it to voicemail so they wouldn't hear me crying. I splashed water on my face, fixed my makeup, and gave myself a pathetic pep talk in the mirror about surviving dinner with some dignity. When I returned, they were all laughing, but it stopped the second I sat down. Perfect. The waiter brought our entrees, and Jake started mocking my food choice. I'd picked pasta, one of the cheaper options because I was already worried about the cost, and he kept saying things like, "Training for a carb overload?" or "Bold choice for your figure." Each jab felt like a tiny sting, piling up fast. I barely ate, just pushed food around my plate, counting the seconds until I could leave. Then Derek asked Jake about a work presentation, and Jake bragged about how his boss loved his ideas and put him in charge of the whole project. Something clicked. Jake had been stressed about this presentation last week, saying his part was only 5 minutes and he was nervous. Now he's the star? It felt like he was living in a fantasy world where he was the hero. Then the bill arrived. The waiter set it down, and Jake picked it up, glanced at it, and slid it toward me. I thought he was just showing me the total. But then he said words I'll never forget, "This isn't working out." I stared, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. I've tried, but I'm just not into you anymore. We're done. In the middle of a restaurant. In front of his friends. After 2 years. Who does that? I was blindsided. Are you serious? You're doing this here. He grabbed his jacket and said, my stomach still twists thinking about it, someone like you should be thankful I even stuck around this long. You're not exactly a catch. Then he and his friends walked out, laughing. I was left with a $352 bill for their fancy appetizers and overpriced drinks. The waiter gave me a pitying look that made it 1,000 times worse. I paid with my credit card, still recovering from holiday shopping, and made it to my car before completely falling apart. I called Sarah from the parking lot, crying so hard she could barely understand me. She showed up at my place with ice cream and wine, the real hero. Between sobs and stress-eating chocolate fudge, I told her everything. She was livid and wanted to confront Jake, but I talked her out of it. Then she got quiet. She started asking about Jake's work comments, the project he mentioned, his role at the company. Finally, she said, Sabrina, Jake's not who he says he is at work. Turns out, Jake wasn't some rising marketing star. He was an assistant, fetching coffee and scheduling meetings. Those business trips? Made up. The big presentation? He just made the slides for the real team. His fancy LinkedIn title? Pure fiction. I felt like a fool. For 2 years, he'd lied about nearly everything, and I never questioned it. What else was a lie? After Sarah left, I went full detective. I dug through our texts, photos, everything. So many inconsistencies I'd overlooked, comments about money that didn't add up, late nights at work, when his location was across town. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the restaurant, how small he made me feel, how humiliated I was. At 3 a.m., I got a text from an unknown number. Hey, this is Ryan from Jake's office. Sarah gave me your number. There's stuff you need to know. That's when things got wild. Thank you all for the kind words on my last post. They brought tears, but the good kind. Many of you asked for an update, so here's what happened next in this crazy saga. After Ryan, Jake's coworker, revealed that my boyfriend of 2 years was living a fantasy life, I spent the next 4 days in a post-breakup haze. You know the kind, crying into ice cream 1 minute, obsessively scrolling old photos the next, wondering if any of it was real. My apartment was a wreck, dishes stacked, laundry everywhere, and like 8 empty takeout bags because cooking felt impossible. The worst part was wanting to text Jake something funny, then remembering what happened, like getting dumped all over again. My brain was stuck in a loop of, was that real? And how did I miss this? I avoided social media, knowing Jake's posts would infuriate me. But I caved and checked Instagram. There he was, posting a gym selfie captioned, Rise Above.
Know your value.
The nerve. I nearly chucked my phone across the room. Sarah came over that night with takeout and found me wrapped in a blanket like a sad taco. She's been a rock through this, making sure I eat real food, listening to me rant on repeat, and never saying, I told you so, even though she had doubts about Jake from the start. While we ate, Sarah showed me her texts with Ryan. Apparently, they'd been talking, and he had a lot to share. According to Ryan, Jake told everyone at work he dumped me because I was clingy and kept pushing for marriage. Excuse me? I didn't have a secret wedding Pinterest board. Jake did, claiming it was for a work project. Then Ryan dropped a bombshell. Jake wasn't just lying about his job title. He was on thin ice at work for stealing credit for others' work and might get fired soon. Those late nights working? He was scrambling to fix mistakes before anyone noticed.
Business trips?
Total lies. I was still reeling when my phone rang. It was Jake's mom, Linda. I almost didn't pick up, but I decided to be the bigger person. Linda's always been so sweet to me. She remembered my birthday, asked about my life, genuinely kind. She sounded worried, asking if everything was okay between me and Jake. Apparently, he told his family we had a minor argument, but we were fine.
A minor argument?
He humiliated me publicly, ditched me with a huge bill, and left me stranded. I kept it vague, saying we were taking a break, not wanting to put her in the middle. Then she mentioned Jake's birthday dinner on Saturday, saying how excited the family was to see me there. I nearly choked on my noodles. Jake had told them we were still together and had big news to share. Dinner was at his parents' house, and he'd implied we had an announcement. After hanging up, I sat there, stunned, while Sarah stared like I'd sprouted horns. She said, "Is he delusional or just a compulsive liar?" I was wondering the same. That's when we hatched a plan. I wasn't going to ghost his family, they'd always been good to me, and they deserved the truth about Jake. But I wouldn't cause a scene or be petty. I'd go to the dinner as invited and let the truth come out naturally. The next day, I met Ryan for coffee. We'd only met through Jake, so it was awkward, but he was genuinely kind. He confirmed everything and shared more about Jake's work lies. Jake claimed to lead a team that was just him and 2 interns. That big presentation he ran? He only handled the slides while his boss presented. Ryan said Jake's stories about me always seemed off, claiming I was high maintenance, even though I paid for most of our dates toward the end because Jake was short on cash, which I now know meant he was terrible with money. Mid-conversation, Ryan got a text from their boss asking him to come in Saturday night for an urgent project. Ryan was bummed about canceling plans, but I had an idea. What if he dropped off work documents at Jake's parents' house during the dinner? The timing would be perfect. As we planned, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake, his first since the restaurant. "We need to talk about what happened. I may have overreacted." Overreacted? I showed Ryan, who nearly choked on his coffee. Overreacting is snapping about someone being late, not publicly shaming your girlfriend of 2 years and sticking her with a $300 bill. I didn't reply. Let him stew. The next 2 days were a frenzy of prep. I wasn't going to this dinner unprepared. I scoured old texts, spotting all the lies, dates he claimed he was at work conferences that didn't exist. Ryan confirmed Jake made up stories about coworkers, even using stock photos from the company website for work event. Sarah came over Friday night to help pick an outfit. Part of me wanted to show up looking stunning just to spite him, but we decided subtle was better. A simple black dress Jake once called plain, but always got me compliments. I barely slept. What if this backfired? What if his family took his side? What if I choked under pressure? By Saturday, I'd bitten my nails to stubs and imagined every possible outcome. Around noon, Jake texted again, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear something nice." My family's pumped. I didn't respond. Let him assume what he wants. I spent the afternoon getting ready, a weird mix of nerves and excitement. Sarah did my hair and gave me a pep talk when I started doubting myself. At 5:30, I drove to his parents' house. I had to pull over once because my hands were shaking too much to drive safely. I sat there, doing breathing exercises from a meditation app I downloaded but never used. Was this insane? Maybe I should just block Jake and move on. But then I pictured him at his birthday dinner, spinning lies about our relationship, maybe playing the victim, and my resolve hardened. I arrived at his parents' house fashionably late, knowing it'd bug Jake. Cars filled the driveway, his whole family was there. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror, took a deep breath, and walked to the door. Jake's dad, Paul, answered with a warm smile and a hug, ushering me inside. The house smelled like Linda's amazing pot roast, and I felt a pang of sadness. I genuinely liked Jake's family, and this might be the last time I'd see them. I rounded the corner into the living room, and there was Jake, drink in hand, laughing at something his cousin said. He froze when he saw me, clearly not expecting me to show up, despite telling his family I would. The shock on his face was gold. Panic flickered before he plastered on a fake smile, came over, and hugged me tightly, whispering, "You actually showed up. We need to talk privately." I just grinned and said. As we took our seats, Jake watching me like a hawk, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan, "On my way.
15 minutes out."
Jake leaned over and hissed, "Why are you here?" I thought after the restaurant. I smiled sweetly and said, loud enough for all to hear, "Oh Jake, I wouldn't miss telling your family about that restaurant. I bet they'd love the story." The sheer terror on his face as Linda started serving dinner was worth every nerve-wracking moment. Game on. I'm finally ready to share what went down at Jake's birthday dinner. Sorry for the delay. I needed a mental health break after all this chaos. Also, my internet's been spotty since my neighbor borrowed my Wi-Fi password and probably downloaded half the internet. So there I was at the dinner table with Jake's family, his parents, Linda and Paul, his sister Emma, his grandma, and 2 cousins I can never keep straight. Linda's incredible pot roast, creamy mashed potatoes I'd literally dreamed about, and a fancy salad nobody touched but everyone pretended to like. The first 20 minutes were tense. Jake kept steering the conversation, shooting me warning glares. I just smiled and passed the rolls, enjoying how his jaw clenched every time I spoke. Petty? Perhaps. Satisfying? Definitely. Linda kept things moving, bless her. She asked about my family, my job, the usual small talk. When she mentioned how proud they were of Jake's big promotion, I nearly spit out my water. I glanced at Jake, whose face matched the red tablecloth. Jake jumped in, bragging about how his team was killing it, and his boss was grooming him for a top role. I nodded, watching him dig himself deeper. Paul, usually quiet, asked about the Thompson account. Jake had told his dad he was leading a major deal. His answer was so vague it could have been a fortune cookie, something about strategic alignment and core synergies.
Emma cooked Maya across the table.
She's always been the skeptic, the one who fact-checks during arguments. She raised an eyebrow like, is he for real? Linda brought up our future, asking about our big news, and if it was about next steps. Jake fumbled his fork, muttering it wasn't the time to discuss. His grandma, who says whatever's on her mind and is my favorite, cut in, so are you two shacking up or what? Jake said you were looking at places together. News to me. The most we discussed was splitting a streaming service to save cash. Jake tried to pivot to himself, boasting about a company card for work expenses. I couldn't resist. I asked what expenses he could approve. He mumbled about client dinners and team events. I casually added, oh, speaking of dinners, Jake took me to this amazing restaurant last week. What was it called, babe? Where you met Tom and Derek. His face drained faster than my phone battery on social media. Seriously, my phone dies after 15 minutes of scrolling. Anyone else? Before he could respond, the doorbell rang. Perfect timing. Linda went to answer and exclaimed, oh Ryan. What a surprise. Jake looked like he might faint. Ryan walked in with a folder, dressed sharply in a collared shirt. He apologized for interrupting Jake's birthday dinner, but said he had urgent work papers Jake needed for Monday. Linda, ever the gracious host, invited him to stay for cake. Jake tried to hustle Ryan to the door, but Paul insisted they handle it at the table, saying, we're all family here. Ryan sat in the empty chair I'd saved next to me. Jake gripped his knife so hard I thought it might snap. Paul asked Ryan about the big presentation Jake supposedly led. Ryan looked confused, then caught on. He glanced at me, then Jake, and made a choice. He said the presentation went well, but their boss delivered it, with Jake and the team supporting. Paul frowned, saying, that's not how Jake told it. I jumped in, messy as I am, and asked Ryan about Jake's promotion. Ryan looked uncomfortable, caught between loyalty and honesty. He fidgeted with his napkin, muttering about company changes. Jake laughed nervously, trying to switch to sports, but Emma wasn't having it. She asked Ryan point-blank what Jake's actual title was. The silence was like dropping a spoon in a quiet cafe. Everyone notices, nobody acknowledges. Ryan looked at Jake, who was begging with his eyes, then at me. I nodded slightly. He cleared his throat and said Jake was an administrative assistant in marketing. Silence. Paul set his fork down. Grandma made a little humph sound. Emma muttered, "Cold it." Jake went into damage control, claiming Ryan was mistaken, that he had tons of responsibilities, that it was complicated. But the cracks were showing. His family started asking pointed questions he couldn't dodge. When was your promotion? Never happened. You said you had a team? He didn't. The corner office you mentioned? Made up. Jake's lies got wilder with each question. He kept glaring at me like I caused this. Linda tried to ease the tension, suggesting we have cake and talk about happier things. Emma, fetching the cake, asked about the restaurant I'd mentioned. My moment. I took a deep breath and spilled everything. How Jake invited me to meet his friends, humiliated me all night, and dumped me in front of everyone, leaving me with a $352 bill I couldn't afford. Jake tried to interrupt, but Paul silenced him with a look of pure disappointment I'd never seen before. Jake's defense? I was overreacting, playing the victim, embarrassing him by not fitting in, and leaving me with the bill was teaching me to budget. His grandma actually scoffed. Ryan, quiet until now, spoke up, confirming my story. He'd heard Jake brag to co-workers about putting me in my place. He showed texts from Derek, proof. Linda came back with the cake as Jake tried to play victim. She set it down, asking what she'd missed. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Paul quietly suggested they needed a family talk about honesty.
Jake lost it. Full meltdown.
He accused me of turning his family against him, called Ryan a backstabber, and said everyone was jealous of his success.
What success?
He knocked over his glass, pointed at me, and yelled that someone like me should be grateful he even bothered with me. His mom gasped. Grandma muttered something that sounded like old lady cursing. Emma just shook her head, unsurprised. I stayed calm, saying the only thing I was grateful for was finally seeing his true colors. Jake stormed out, slamming the door so hard one of Linda's decorative plates fell and broke. The aftermath was oddly quiet. Linda apologized endlessly. Paul looked drained and defeated. Emma helped clean up the spilled water. Ryan apologized for his part in the awkwardness, but said he couldn't stand by while Jake lied to everyone.
The weirdest thing?
Instead of asking me to leave, they insisted I stay for cake. So there we were, Jake's ex, his coworker and his family, eating birthday cake without the birthday boy. It could have been awkward, but it wasn't. After, I helped Linda clean the kitchen. She kept apologizing, saying she had no idea Jake was lying so much. She looked heartbroken, not just about what he did to me but about who her son had become. I felt bad for her. It's tough for parents to face their kids' flaws. She quietly asked if there were warning signs before, and I admitted there were red flags I ignored because I wanted to believe in him. As I was leaving, Paul pulled me aside, thanking me for being truthful and apologizing for his son's actions. He looked broken, like he was wondering where they went wrong raising him. I told him it wasn't their fault. Jake made his own choices. Ryan offered to walk me to my car, probably sensing I needed a moment to process. As we walked, he said Jake had been struggling at work for months, taking credit for others' ideas, faking client emails, and was on his final warning before possible firing. Suddenly, Jake's obsession with seeming successful made a twisted kind of sense. His whole identity was built on this fake image of achievement and status. In a weird way, I almost pitied him. Almost. I thanked Ryan for backing me up and drove home, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief. Like finally kicking off tight shoes after a long day. Sorry for the odd metaphor, but you get it. When I got home, I had 3 missed calls from Sarah, desperate for updates. I was about to call her when my phone buzzed with a text from Jake, "You've ruined everything. This isn't over." I didn't reply. I blocked his number and made some tea. I should have been scared or upset, but I just felt done. And a little proud for standing up to him. I thought that was it. I really did. But this morning, my phone was flooded with 13 missed calls from Jake's mom, sister, Ryan, and some unknown numbers. Something had gone down overnight. And judging by the increasingly frantic voicemails, Jake had completely spiraled. I'm finally ready to explain those 13 missed calls. Thanks for waiting while I processed this mess. Also, sorry for the delay. My laptop decided to do a surprise 4-hour update right when I started writing. So, I woke up to my phone overflowing with notifications from Jake's family and Ryan. At first, I thought someone had died. As I scrolled through, my stomach sank. 5 missed calls from Linda, 3 from Emma, 2 from Ryan, and 3 from numbers I didn't recognize. I called Linda first since her voicemail sounded urgent, all variations of, "Sabrina, please call me when you get this." She picked up immediately, sounding exhausted. This mess. Also, sorry for the delay. My laptop decided to do a surprise 4-hour update right when I started writing. So, I woke up to my phone overflowing with notifications from Jake's family and Ryan. At first, I thought someone had died. As I scrolled through, my stomach sank. 5 missed calls from Linda, 3 from Emma, 2 from Ryan, and 3 from numbers I didn't recognize. I called Linda first since her voicemail sounded urgent, all variations of, "Sabrina, please call me when you get this." She picked up immediately, sounding exhausted. Apparently, Jake went on a massive bender after storming out of his birthday dinner. He showed up at his ex-girlfriend's place at 2 a.m., drunk and yelling about how I destroyed his life. This ex, who I didn't even know existed, was terrified and called Emma, who had to pick him up. But that wasn't all. Jake spent the night sending unhinged messages to nearly everyone we know. He texted Ryan, threatening to sabotage him at work. He posted a long rambling Facebook status about being betrayed by snakes, and how people would regret crossing him. Worst of all, he'd sent my address to his friend Derek in a private message, threatening to make me pay for embarrassing him. Derek, who apparently has some decency, immediately sent the message to Linda, which is why she was so desperate to reach me, was sitting on my couch in my ratty pajamas, hair still in a messy bun, trying to wrap my head around this while Linda apologized a million times for her son's behavior. I should have been scared, I guess. But I was just drained. Like when your phone's been at 1% for hours, waiting to die so you can plug it in. Linda's offer to check on me was sweet, but sent me into a panic cleaning frenzy. Nothing motivates you to tidy up like knowing someone's mom is about to see your place, right? My doorbell rang as I was shoving laundry in the closet and scrubbing toothpaste off the sink. Emma was with her. They brought coffee and those amazing pastries from the bakery near their house, which honestly, I'll miss most about Jake. We sat at my wobbly kitchen table, and they filled me in on the Jake situation. According to Emma, Jake has a history of lying about his life. In college, he told people he was on the soccer team when he didn't even make tryouts. He once claimed to be dating a popular girl who didn't know his name. He had a habit of crafting a fake version of himself, more successful, more popular, more everything. My phone kept buzzing with texts from people reacting to Jake's social media meltdown while they talked. Sarah was freaking out, wanting to come over with her boyfriend, who does martial arts, just in case. She watches too many true crime shows, I swear. My group chat was blowing up with confused reactions to Jake's cryptic posts. Then the doorbell rang again. I froze, thinking it might be Jake. Emma checked the window and sighed. It was Ryan.